Okay, and now Chloe's gonna drink water, so that's good. Oh god, I'm not flexible enough. Casual. I'm Jennifer and welcome to my library. Today I'm going to be doing a recap of the entire year of 2023, and beside me we have all of the books that I own and have in my possession that I read this year. I'm going to be going through all of the books, including the books that I don't own, and these here are the books that I haven't finished yet because this is December 3rd. We still got a whole month to go, baby. Anyway, I'm gonna get a cup of tea so my voice doesn't give out, and I'm going to switch over to a more comfortable position so that we can go through all of these books. Let's talk about books. I have moved. I've gotten a little bit more comfortable. I have a cup of tea so that my voice doesn't go out entirely because I have an absolute ton of books to get through today. It's over 170. The reason why I started the booktube videos on this channel this year is because I started reading in a big way this year. It was becoming increasingly important to me, and I wanted some sort of outlet. We are going to start in January. Here's the secret, the dirty secret that I have, is I actually started the reading year starting December 25th because I had some time off and I was just really excited about reading for the upcoming year, and I just wanted that fresh start feeling. Take my January with a grain of salt. I had an interesting start to the year. I was seeing videos, and one in particular, which I'll put like a little picture of it up, of cozy fantasy recommendations. And that was really key to me going big and all in on reading this year. I can't exactly understand what was going on with me where I just felt this big push within me to read a lot. But I did, I followed through with it, and now I'm continuing to follow through with it, and we will see where this upcoming year takes me. From that video for Cozy Fantasy, I got a lot of my initial reading for this year. And the first book that I read this year was Witch Hat Atelier. This is the first manga that I've ever read. This manga is so beautiful. The art is on another level, and the panel work is also on another level. And the storyline is very cute, and it was such a wonderful experience. I was flying through these things because I just thought that they were the best. Also from that cozy fantasy recommendation was Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, and it was fine. I know a lot of people love this book to bits, and I genuinely just thought it was just fine. It was totally fine, but not world-changing, life-changing, nothing like that. But I did give it a 4-star. I also read Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune, and I gave this 3 stars. I just didn't really care that much for it. I read The English Understand Wool by Helen DeWitt. This was recommended by Ariel Bassett in a very short video, which was like, these are my favorite books from 2022. And this was also a short and sweet little book. I gave it 5 stars. It's very good. Next up, Breasts and Eggs by Mieko Kawakami. I really liked the first part of this book, which was focused on breasts. I thought that that part of the story as its own complete story was very good, and I really enjoyed it. And then the eggs part came in and just was not something that I was interested in at all, and I gave it 2 stars. Then I read Charlotte's Web, which I just adore, by E.B. White. I love this book so much. I want to protect Wilbur with my whole heart, and Charlotte is such a good mother figure. It's just brilliant. If you haven't read it in a while, or if you haven't read it at all, I highly recommend it. I gave it 4 stars. I don't know why. It's a 5-star. Then I read Orange World by Karen Russell. She's one of my favorite authors, and this is a collection of short stories. This was really wonderful. There are some really, really good stories in here, and all of them are compelling in their own way. I gave this 5 stars. Then I read Gathering Moss by Robin Wall Kimmerer, and this is nonfiction about moss, and it weaves moss and work life and home life and nature and humanity in such a wonderful way. It really allows you to relate to the concepts of these moss with your real lived life. It was very, very well written, and it inspired me to get a microscope, so it's kind of life-changing. Back to that cozy fantasy world, I read A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking by T. Kingfisher. This was about the time that I realized I don't think I like cozy fantasy. I'm not really resonating with any of these books. I gave this 3 stars. I found a new author that I like, Robin Sloan, Sourdough. I don't know, it's just an experience. It's very strange, it's very Bay Area. I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. Not everything about it is perfect, but there are so many interesting elements. It's very unique, and it's a fun read. I gave it 5 stars. I also read The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, and I really loved it. I don't own a copy. I borrowed one from my sister, but I think if I really love the second book, which I haven't started yet, if I love it, then I will probably pick up both of them. I gave it 5 stars. I had such a wonderful time with this. I was looking up books that were like The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, because I was so into that world. I also love the schooling element of this book. It's the main character. I want to protect him so much. He's such a human character. The next book was House of Salt and Sorrows. I think this came from a book recommendation video. It's just not really my taste, and I gave it 3 stars. It's by Aaron A. Craig. Then we have Devil House by John Darnielle. This is an author that I've really, really enjoyed, The Wolf in White Van, and I really think I should read more of. Such a strange novel about a true crime writer and kind of the impacts of true crime, delving into that subject, which I really enjoyed. I also read The Glass Sentence by S.E. Grove. This is a YA fantasy series. I just read the first book in the series about a girl who lives in this kind of shattered world where time is weird. Quite compelling magic system and world building. But ultimately, I'm probably not going to continue with it. I gave it 4 stars. The second to last book for January is Kiki's Delivery Service by Eiko Kodono. I've definitely seen the Miyazaki movie before and thought it was so beautiful. The source material is also very warm and comforting, and I guess this is one of the cozy fantasy books that I actually did enjoy. I give it 4 stars. We have Carrie by Stephen King, and something that I really appreciated about reading Carrie for the second time, I read it previously, I think I was in high school, was I think it's in the introduction, Stephen King talks about the motivation behind writing this book, and it really has to do with knowing these girls in his childhood and youth who needed like a revenge story. And reading it in that way, oh, I just loved it so much, and I loved this. I gave it 4 stars on here, but I feel like this is a 5-star, to be honest. Now we're going into February. I gotta put these away and find all the February ones. So the first one is The Girl from the Other Side. I just fell in love with this book. This whole series. I did read the entire series during this year, and I loved it so much. And I do want to pick up copies of each volume. But I just love it. I love the artwork. I love the story. I love this little girl. She's so cute. I love their relationship. Yes, I just think it's just so beautiful. And it was 100% comfort read for me. I had like a pretty hard time at the beginning of last year with like, I don't know, I was just very sad, and reading this book helped me, or reading the series helped me a lot. I also read a graphic novel, a like younger targeted graphic novel called The Tea Dragon Society by Kay O'Neill. I didn't really like it that much. I gave it 3 stars. I also read The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman, which is a very magical story and kind of dreary at the same time. It was okay. I gave it 3 stars. I read All Rights Reserved. I got into a weird zone where I was looking at these old screenshots from YouTube videos from like 2017 or something, like a long time ago. And it was like Katie Tastic and folks like that reviewing books. And one of them was All Rights Reserved by Gregory Scott Katsoulis. This is a dystopian young adult kind of book. You have to pay for the words that you use or something like that. It really, really read like those TikToks where, you know, like the girl wakes up and it's a dystopian world and there's like, you know, like you have to pay for the words you use or whatever. So like everything's been copywritten. It was fun and it was silly and I thought it was okay. I gave it 3 stars. Then I read Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore. This is fun. It is about a bookstore, but it's not like that super cozy bookstore feeling kind of story. It's a lot more like techie and, I don't know, nerdy, I guess. It was good. I gave it 4 stars. Again, from those earlier booktube screenshots, I read Knots and Crosses by Mallory Blackman. This is kind of an alternate universe where power dynamics between white and black people have been reversed, and there is basically a mixed race couple, a Bruin, and that causes some problems. It was very emotional. I feel like I really got spun up in the emotions, but overall it was just okay to me, and I gave it 3 stars. I also read Planetfall, which was another screenshot that I looked into, and this is by Emma Newman. This was one of my favorite books this year. I gave it 5 stars. This is a science fiction where these people have colonized a planet and there are secrets. It's kind of a mystery. It's pretty fun. I also read The Mysterious Benedict Society by Trenton Lee Stewart. That was after watching the television series that was made based on these books. To be completely honest, I thought the book was a little bit slow going. It dragged a little bit for me, and I don't really know why. It just wasn't page turning. The TV series is really good, and the book was also good. I gave it 4 stars. Okay, next month, we're into March. So after the terrible, terrible hole that The Girl from the Other Side left in my heart, I started reading Somari and the Guardian of the Forest, Volume 1 by Jaakko Geraci. I have mixed feelings on it. I really like the idea, and some of the settings have really stuck in my mind, but it was not a manga that like kept me turning the pages. It made me very sleepy, to be honest, and I don't really like the character design of the child character in this, like the main child. Anyway, I gave this 4 stars, but in retrospect, because I gave up on the series entirely, I'm not sure. I read Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey, and I know that this is like quintessential science fiction for some people, or at least more modern science fiction. I don't know, it just seemed very like masculine to me. It was okay. It was fine. The main characters were just kind of boring to me. And I do know that this is like a big like TV series now. it wasn't really for me. I gave it 3 stars. And then I read a handful of children's books that I got from the thrift store and library discards to fill up my little free library. I read 3 Little Kittens by Paul Gudotti. I loved this. I thought it was so cute. It is just adorable. The illustrations and everything. I also read Hanna-Barbera's Devlin by Kathleen N. Daly. This was silly. It has some wonderful illustrations, but very, very bad. I read Ava's Treetop Festival by Rebecca Elliott. This is like a children's first chapter book kind of thing. And it's about a little owl. It's part of the Owl Diaries series. And it was fine. Oscar Cat About Town stole my heart away. I loved it so much. It's by James Harriet. Then Ava Sees a Ghost by Rebecca Elliott, continuing on the Owl Diaries. And this one I don't remember very well, but it's kind of a departure from the first one. Then there was Harry and the Terrible What's-It by Dick Gackenbach, which is a crazy name. It's a very aggressive name. And oh my god, the artwork on Harry and the Terrible What's-It is so good. The concept is so good. I gave it 5 stars. Then there was Maud and Claude Go Abroad, which I think is actually still in my little free library, and I could go pick it up, but I'm not going to, because those books are not in my possession. They're in the world's possession. And that's by Susan Medog. I think I actually do have this one still in a pile over there. And it's The Story of Ferdinand by Munro Leaf. And it is wonderful. It's so good. It's classic for a reason. I also read Elevation by Stephen King. I picked this one up out of my little free library, I'm pretty sure. Either that or it was from a thrift store and I put it in my little free library. This is a very, very weird novella by Stephen King where a guy like keeps losing weight until he is like weightless. It's really weird. It was really weird. I gave it 3 stars. And I read A Story for Small Bear by Alice B. McGinty, which was just cute. Very good illustrations, good children's book. The Adventure Zone, Volume 5. This is a graphic novel based on the podcast, the D&D podcast by the McElroy family. I think it might have to do with the color and also how heavy the books are, but sometimes I get like just a small bit nauseous reading these books. And also the smell of them. I honestly think I would have rather read that digitally, but I do own 1 through 4, so I also picked up the 5th one. I loved this podcast, and I just feel like there's something missing in the graphic novels. I read Little Town on the Prairie by Laura Ingalls Wilder. I don't know why I picked this one up first. I really thought it was the first one, but it's the last one. I read all of the Laura Ingalls Wilder books that I do own. I read them all this year, and I started with this one. It was fine. I didn't rate any of those books. Then I read The House of Rust by Khadija Abdallah Bajaber. I really did not connect with this book. I gave it 2 stars. I wanted to like it. I really, really did. And I read Volume 1 of My Prison Journal by John Smith. I read a bunch of these volumes, which ends up, it's kind of like reading volumes of a manga, because they're just like, you know, various entries in a real man's prison journal. They take up a handful of slots, and they're not full-length novels, just for full transparency. So now let's start into April. It looks like the beginning of April might have been one of my worst reading slumps, or like generally reading things that weren't uplifting or very good. And that kind of starts with the prison journal. So I was reading My Prison Journal, Volume 2. I read up to 9, and then I stopped reading it. It was very educational in terms of what people in the outside world, not in the prison system, could do to help prisoners, and also the treatment of prisoners, how They're just treated so inhumanely. It's kind of ridiculous. I read Arch Conspirator by Veronica Roth. No idea why I read this. I wasn't into it one bit. I think this was a novella. I don't think I've read anything by Veronica Roth. It's a retelling of Antigone. I don't even think I should count this as me having read it because I was so disengaged. I gave it 3 stars. I read Bookworm by Robin Eatman. Don't know why I read this either. I think I just saw some books at my library and I just picked them. I gave this 3 stars. I didn't like it at all. I didn't like anything about it, really. Then I read Little House in the Big Woods. This is a reread. I read this when I was in like 3rd grade or something. I was so influenced by this book. I just started writing my own series that was basically this book, but told by somebody completely uninformed about how people used to live in rural America. I didn't rate this or any book in that series. This was such a disappointment. I got a recommendation from Amazon of a book that I would like, and it was this, Beautiful Darkness by Fabian Vellman and Kara Scott. This is such a gross, grim, nasty little book. It has these really cute characters, and the nature elements are like so beautiful, but it is exactly what it says. It's darkness entirely. It is so brutal, just like the brutality of nature showcased. It was nasty. It was really gross. I give it 3 stars. I would not recommend that to anybody. If you're like having a hard time, don't read that. Then I read something that was nice, which was Everything is Beautiful and I'm Not Afraid by Yao Xiao. And that was quite good. It's very short, but it's like these beautiful little illustrations and like comics, and that I gave 4 stars. Ooh! Then we have A Shining Star, and it's Doomsday Book by Connie Willis. This was also from a screenshot from a video from a long time ago, and it was wonderful. This is an excellent time travel science fiction kind of book. Really, the science fiction is only about the time travel, and it's about pandemics, and it's about medieval Europe. It was so good. I really enjoyed it. I gave this 5 stars. Then I read a book that I've loaned to somebody, so I don't have it with me, but I wish I did. It's Walls and Bars by Eugene V. Debs. Eugene V. Debs was a presidential nominee for the Socialist Party in the United States in the 1920s. He was nominated for president when he was in prison, and it was very good. Then I read The Wool Omnibus by Hugh Howey. I think this also has a TV series. This came from a recommendation from a coworker who was talking about it, mentioned that it's one of the most successful like self-published works. It was very good. It's a science fiction where there are these people who are living in a silo. It's kind of like a post-apocalyptic scene. Like the outside world is inhospitable to people, and intrigue and stuff being hidden, and it was very like fast-paced and exciting. I give it 4 stars. Then I read this little like pocket guide to the prison system in the United States called Are Prisons Obsolete by Angela Y. Davis. I dog-eared nearly every ding-dong page in here. There are so many wonderful statistics and analyses of the United States prison system. It was wonderful. I gave it 4 stars. I read Prison Writings, My Life is My Sundance by Leonard Pelter. Leonard Pelter was put into prison for like being involved in shooting 2 police type people. I don't know. They were involved in like standoff at a reservation, kind of about the Native American experience and also the prison system. And this one is weirdly kind of optimistic because he does get to talk about his experience bringing his culture into the prison as much as he could, how that helps him. I gave this 4 stars. Then I read Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Newell. This is about like these giant alien robots and like assembling them and the consequences. It's kind of a silly little sci-fi. I gave it 3 stars, but I did continue on with the series because I was intrigued enough. Then I read Scott Pilgrim Color Collection Volume 1, and that's by Brian Lee O'Malley. It is very good. Scott Pilgrim is very, very good. It's very good. I loved it. I thought it was so good. I gave it 4 stars. Next month, we are in May. I started reading After Atlas, which is the 2nd book in the Planetfall series. This is by Emma Newman, and I thought it was okay. It follows a different character, and he's on Earth, and I wasn't really connected in it. I really wanted a sequel to Planetfall, to be perfectly honest. That was like those people, that story, that world, but the next part of it, like what happens after. This wasn't that. It was entirely different, and it was kind of like a little mystery, like a murder mystery. And it was okay. I gave it 3 stars. Then I read Before Mars by Emma Newman, which is the next book in the series, and it was also okay. It follows, again, a different character entirely, but kind of related, all in the same universe. And I gave that one 4 stars. Then I read this weird little children's book called Miss Hickory by Carolyn Sherwin Bailey. This is a reread because I read this when I was a child. And I thought about this book so much. I read it as a library discard, and I got rid of the copy of it, so I had to figure out what the name of the book was again and read it. And I had a fun time with it. I rated it 4 stars, which is kind of surprising to me. But it's about this little twig lady with a hickory nut for a head and how she navigates living her little doll life in the wild. Then I read Waking Gods by Sylvain Newell, and that is the 2nd book in that series with the big alien robot pieces. And yeah, it gets more complicated. It gets weirder. Very readable. Not very good, I suppose. I gave it 3 stars. Okay, then we get into a little bit of a classics era. I read John Barleycorn by Jack London. I feel like I've talked about this book a lot. I really, really liked it. It is his memoirs, and it's really centered around alcohol and alcohol use because he was trying to argue for prohibition and using himself as an example as an alcoholic. That was just a really, really interesting perspective. Then I read Babbitt by Sinclair Lewis, and I just love this book so much. The feel of it, the cover of it, I really like. I don't know why it says I didn't rate this. I guess I didn't rate it. I just had good vibes about this book, so I feel like I would have given it 5 stars. But yeah, this is about like just a guy like living in the suburbs, being a little business guy. Mundane, but interesting story at the same time. Then I read The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway. This book is fine. These young people who are kind of putzing about in Europe, they go and see like bull races in Spain, and they get drunk and they're aimless, and it's just like a classic Hemingway kind of dealio. I didn't really like it very much. I gave it 3 stars. Then I read The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells. This was cool. I tried to read this when I was younger, and I thought it was so boring when I was like a kid, right? And I can totally understand why I thought that, because it is really boring. This guy, the Invisible Man, is really just like a bad friend and like a catty person. And that character is really interesting. You get somebody who's kind of like a shitty person and you make them invisible and who knows what's gonna happen. Then there's Farmer Boy by Laura Ingalls Wilder. This follows Almanzo Wilder, who turns out to be the husband of Laura Ingalls Wilder when she gets married. Follows his life, how he raises horses and how important that is to him. Then I read Kidnapped. This version's abridged, but I did read through LibriVox, so I read the unabridged version. I tried to read it along with the text and I kept getting tripped up because there were whole swaths that were missing. There's a lot going on. It's very young or youthful and exciting, and I gave it 4 stars. Then I read On the Banks of Plum Creek. I really liked the beginning of this book. This is also Laura Ingalls Wilder. In the beginning, they are in this really fun little house that I just enjoyed, and I really enjoyed her like playing in the creek and all of that. And then towards the end, I think it gets a little bit more serious, like they start going to school and stuff. It gets a little bit more boring. Then I read Dance, Dance, Dance by Haruki Murakami, and I did not like it at all. It was not my thing. It came recommended by Emma from Emmy Reads, and I feel like I have some taste in common with her, but this was not it. It was not my thing. It's about this old man who is taking care of like this young teen girl, and there's like a hotel that's weird. I don't even remember. I didn't like it so much I like blocked it out of my mind. And then I read By the Shores of Silver Lake by Laura Ingalls Wilder. And I don't really remember that much about this one, to be perfectly honest. I think, is this the one where he's like trying to build their house? Okay, yeah, Pa is like away for work this entire time because I think he had a bit of a mess up in the previous one where he like didn't make his money, so he's like SOL in terms of like trying to take care of his family. So now I'm in June. June's thick. June is big. This stack with White Fang by Jack London. I really wanted to read something by Jack London after reading John Barleycorn and finding his life so interesting. And I've read White Fang and it's just not really for me, but it was very well written. I gave it 3 stars. Then I read Several People Are Typing by Calvin Katsulke. I thought it was really good. It's about a man who gets trapped in his Slack channel at work. It's told through the Slack channel. Quick read, fun read. And I read Journey to the Center of the Earth by Jules Verne. I don't know if I read exactly this version because I read it as a LibriVox, so I don't think it was this new modern translation. And I loved it. I gave it 4 stars. Then I read Around the World in 80 Days, also by Jules Verne. And this was fun and weird, and like the characters are kind of sassy. I give it 3 stars. It was just kind of wacky. I don't know. Then I read Season of the Bruja Volume 1. This is a comic by Aaron Duran. It just wasn't really for me. I was really excited for it, but it was genuinely kind of confusing to me. And I give it 3 stars. I also read Todo Esto Era Nuestro by Paula Carvajal, and that was a really short graphic novel in Spanish about a couple that was having some tough times. And I rated it 4 stars. I enjoyed it. Then I read Odessa by Jonathan Hill, which unfortunately was missing from my thumbnail because I forgot to pick it out of my pile. I love the artwork in this and I love the story, and I'm so excited to read the continuation of this story. It is like a post-apocalyptic set mostly in California. It's beautiful. Oh, I'm throwing it. Then I read The Long Winter by Laura Ingalls Wilder. I really enjoyed this. It's about like a bunch of terrible blizzards. They're snowed in the whole time. And it's pretty interesting to hear how people lived like that. I enjoyed that one quite a lot. Then I went into my John Green era. I read An Abundance of Catherines, and I didn't really like it very much. I gave it 3 stars. I listened to Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone in Spanish, and that was kind of an enjoyable experience. I gave it 3 stars. Then I read Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. I thought this one was pretty good. I gave it 4 stars. I liked the character a lot. And then I read Mostly Harmless by Douglas Adams. And this one was pretty good as well. I thought this was sad. This is the last one. This one's sad. Yeah, this one is sad. Yeah, anyway, I finally finished that series, but, you know, I gave it 4 stars. Speaking of sad, Timbuktu. This one's really sad. This is a book told from the perspective of a dog that belongs to an unhomed man. Basically, he's dying, and the dog has to find another life. Sad, as you can imagine. It's also very short. I gave this 5 stars. It was very touching. Then I read We Bought a Zoo, and now we're getting into the territory of books that I have reviewed in reading wrap-ups. So I'll try to go a little bit faster. We Bought a Zoo by Benjamin Mee. I gave this 4 stars. Surprisingly enjoyed it. And Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. This did a switcheroo on me, and I did actually very much enjoy it, but it is true crime, and I didn't know that. And I gave it 4 stars. Memoirs of a Geisha by Arthur Golden. I gave this 3 stars. It's very beautifully written, but has a weird focus or emphasis, I suppose. It's just very sexual for, you know, children. It just kind of sucks. I gotta get out of here. Oh, I'm like building a fort around me. So I think now we're into July. This is July. Looking at this stack, I'm like, wow, what a wonderful month. Starting with The Birch Bark House by Louise Erdrich. This is a book that I've looked up because I wanted something that was like or set during the time period of the Little House on the Prairie books, but by the native perspective, and that's basically exactly what this book serves. Sad. And I didn't rate it. Then I read The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle. I was in a weird headspace, very disconnected when I read this book, so I wasn't really all there, and I also did not read it. And I read A Yellow Raft in Blue Water by Michael Doris. This was pretty good. I gave it 4 stars. It's about 3 different generations of women in the same family. Then Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe by Fanny Flagg. The further away from when I read this, the less connected, like the less I really even want to talk about it. I don't know what happened. I gave it a 4-star rating after I read it, and at this point I'm like, this is 3-star, I don't even want to talk about it. Then I read An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. I actually quite enjoyed this. It was very weird. Honestly, very similar to the Waking Gods alien robots that show up. A young woman who is there to film them, and she becomes a bit of a celebrity. And then I read Children of the Whales Volume 1. I was giving it a try. This is a manga. I think I only read volume 3, and then I gave up entirely. It's just not really my thing, but I thought the artwork was really pretty and that the story was compelling at the beginning. Turns out the story changes quite a bit, and it wasn't really my thing. Then I read Paper Towns by John Green. I gave this 3 stars. I didn't think it was that good, but it's okay. Then the Ladybird Book of Garden Birds. I thought this was quite enjoyable. This is just a reference guide with different bird facts and then a little illustration of each bird. And then I got sick and I read a bunch of books. I read The Mountain and the Sea by Ray Naylor, and I absolutely adored this. I thought it was excellent, and I'm excited to reread this. It was one of my favorite books this year, but I was in a crazy fever-fueled state, so my actual comprehension of the book is questionable, but I did give it 5 stars, so I had a good time. Then I read The Ways of a Mud Dauber, and my God, I loved this book so much. This is the weirdest book, probably, that I have read this year. This is my favorite book that I read this entire year. It was amazing. It was amazing, and I don't think that many people will feel that way, but it was so, so good to me. And that's by George G. Schaefer. It is literally about wasps and this man doing experiments with wasps. And I loved it. I loved it so much. Another book that I absolutely loved was The Old Man in the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. This is such a brilliant novella. It is really compelling. It gets you so invested, and yeah, it's just a wonderful short story. And then Open Throat by Henry Hoke is about a gay mountain lion that is in the LA area, and he kind of gets involved in suburban life a little bit. I very much enjoyed this, and I gave it 4 stars. I loved reading from his perspective, and felt bad for him. Then I read Live from Death Row by Mumia Abu-Jamal, and I thought this book was very important. I did not rate it. It wasn't 100% for me. This is written by a prisoner who was on death row. I think he was like an NPR correspondent kind of person before he went to prison. And he went to jail on death row for killing a cop. And the details of that case are discussed in the back of this book. There's just some really haunting portrayals of what it's like to be in prison, and the prison system sucks. Then I read another one of my favorite books this year, which was The Particular Sadness of Lemon Cake by Amy Bender. This is about a young girl who has this unique ability to taste the emotions of the person who prepared her food. And she just like has this extra sense when she eats food. She can understand more about how it was prepared, where it was prepared, and how somebody felt when preparing it. And that has some pretty serious repercussions for her in her family life. Then I read The Giraffe, the Pelly, and Me by Roald Dahl. And this is just a silly children's book. It didn't really mean that much to me, and I didn't rate it. Ooh, then I read one of the books I really didn't like this year, and that was The Soul of an Octopus by Cy Montgomery. I gave this 2 stars. It was not what I was looking for. And I read And Then I Woke Up by Malcolm Devlin. A pretty experimental book that's kind of like a zombie apocalypse book, but if people were stricken ill, the idea that there were zombies rather than there actually being zombies. So, an interesting experiment in human thought. Let's go to August. We're almost at the end of the year, right? So the first thing that I read in August was The Sprite and the Gardener by Ria Brego. I gave this 4 stars, but I was disappointed by it. This is a graphic novel about these cute little sprites in a garden, and the art is really, really beautiful, but the story is lacking in my opinion. Then I read The Terraformers by Annalee Newitz, and this is a fairly inventive science fiction on a planet that is being terraformed, and it goes through kind of the earlier stages of that and the later city building, city planning stages. I thought this was really, really cool. I would love to read more books that are like this, and there were some elements of it that made me a little bit uncomfortable, like more sexual elements. But overall, I thought it was really, really cool. I gave it 4 stars, but I think it's a 5-star. Then I read Pilu of the Woods by Mai Kane Nguyen, and this was a very cute, very good, high quality, young adult graphic novel. I thought it was excellent. I gave it 4 stars. And I read Yoke by Mary H.K. Choi. This is about young women, sisters, who are living in New York and trying to navigate adulthood while having things thrown in their way and, being sisters at the same time. I read The Illustrated Man by Ray Bradbury. This is a short story collection of Ray Bradbury's work. It's very good. I gave it 4 stars. Then I read Lemon by Kwon Yo Sun, and it was very good. I really, really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars, but it really surprised me considering I didn't really know what to expect. So I'm just very pleased with that book. It's about kind of the repercussions and various people around this teen girl who is murdered when she is in high school. And it's also written by a Korean author set in Korea. Then I read Sugarcane Island, which is a choose your own adventure type book by Edward Packard. This was not very good. I did not read it, but it's a choose your own adventure, so what are you gonna do? Then I read The Great Good Thing by Roderick Townley. This knocked my socks off. This shocked me so much with how good it was. Really kind of felt like the never-ending story, I guess, in terms of like, I don't know, its reach and how impactful it was. Yeah, this was really, really good. I gave this 5 stars. Some nonfiction. These are not essays. They really seem like essays about nature by Annie Dillard. It's Pilgrim at Tinker Creek. It was excellent, excellent, excellent. I gave it 5 stars. Then I read Junk Wraith, a graphic novel by Eleanor Ritchie. Kind of fell apart at the end, but the art is really interesting and the story was also quite interesting. I gave it 3 stars. Ooh, and then Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. This was so, so good. About like a little android. Yeah, just, I don't want to give too much away. This was very interesting. I gave it 4 stars. Now we're gonna go into September. So I read Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets as an audiobook in Spanish, and I gave it 3 stars again. I don't know. Then I read A Death in Door County by Annalise Ryan. I really, really enjoyed this. I'm excited to read more, and I gave this 4 stars. This is kind of like an adult Scooby-Doo, and it has like a lake monster. Then I read Garlic and the Vampire by Brie Paulson. I was disappointed by this. It is a graphic novel about a head of garlic that confronts a vampire. Then I read The Little Prince, which is a reread. Just one of the most brilliant and the greatest books in the world. I give it 5 stars. I love it so much. And then I read Blasphemy Ultima. This was a reread. I did not enjoy it. I give it 3 stars. And I go on a rant about it in a reading wrap-up, so I won't do that here. I read A Psalm for the Wild Built, which was okay. Really interested in more books that have this kind of setting or are this genre, but are more fleshed out, maybe like a harder science fiction version of this type of story, like a solar punk type story that has a little bit more going on. But I really liked this one. I also really liked the messaging of this one. I gave it 4 stars. Then I read Hex by Thomas Oldhovelt, and I thought this was really, really good. Gave it 4 stars. Really enjoyed this. I'm considering reading more books that are kind of like this. And I read Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson. Didn't enjoy it very much. Kind of ruined my day when I read it. There is a reading vlog of that. I'm in the sun. Baby, I'm bright as heck right now. Then I read Biography of X by Catherine Lacey. I gave this 4 stars. This was a really solid novel. And I read Operating Manual for Spaceship Earth by R. Buckminster Fuller. If you want way more in-depth opinions on this, please look at my reading wrap-up where I discuss this in more detail. And then I read A Prayer for the Crown Shy, which is the second book to A Psalm for the Wild Built, also by Becky Chambers. And it was a good continuation, but it felt like a little bit less. I don't know. I gave it 4 stars. And now we're into October by Cherie Dimaline. It was okay. Kind of a standard novel. I gave it 3 stars. Then I also read Chlorine by Jade Song. I thought this was really, really good. I gave it 5 stars. I would love to own it. I haven't picked one up yet. I think it's a relatively new release. Then I read The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells. Absolutely loved it. Loved it so much. One of my favorite books that I read this year. And I started Flying Witch, the manga, and I'm up to, I think, volume 6? Sorry, I'm on volume 5. I started reading volume 5 last night. I just got it from my library. Then I read Frankenstein, and this was a reread for me. And it didn't go as well as I expected. And I read some children's books. Those are The House That Jack Built by David Cutts, Dinosaurs, Dinosaurs by Brian Barton, One Fine Day by Nani Hogrogian, and Froggy Learns to Swim by Jonathan London. I also read Land of Wondrous Cold by Gil and Darcy Wood. That is a nonfiction about Antarctic exploration. And I read Britney Spears' memoir, The Woman in Me. After that, I started November with finishing Silent Earth, Averting the Insect Apocalypse by Dave Goulson. This is a very, very good, very important book about the absolutely precipitous decline of our insect populations and the reasons why this happens and what we can do to stop it. Then I started reading the manga Spy Family, absolutely fell in love, and I've read volume 1, 2, 3, and I think I'm on the wait list for volume 4 right now. It's very, very good. I also read Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, and I gave that 4 stars. I also read Vert by Jeff Noon, and I gave that 3 stars. This is a weird, I guess, science fiction. It's kind of like that era of sci-fi, like Free Jack or whatever, that's just kind of like gritty and like, I don't know, virtual reality kind of thing. I read a children's book, Dogs Don't Wear Sneakers, and I read On Chesil Beach by Ian McEwan. This is a novella. Weird. I am filming a reading vlog about this where I gave my thoughts pretty in depth. I didn't rate it. That's funny. I can totally understand why I didn't rate this, because I wouldn't know how to. Okay, this was still in November. I read Perlu the Bold by Avi. This took me an insanely long time to read. I feel like I was reading this the year before, and I got to a certain point and I just couldn't stay awake when I was reading it. I would read it and I would want to finish reading it because it's a children's book, and I would just not be able to keep my eyes open. There was something about it that was just so boring. I didn't particularly enjoy this. Think of it as like you're in Rito Village and like Tears of the Kingdom, but instead of birds, they're like little rabbits. Think of it like that, and then think of like the stuff as like side quests, and then if you're anything like me, then you'll kind of get through it. And the most recent thing that I finished reading was Heretics Anonymous by Katie Henry, and I finished reading that on November 30th, and that is by Katie Henry. It's a young adult fiction about young romance at a Catholic school, and it has a lot to do about like, you know, religion and religious differences and like what religion can kind of bring to the table, and about this kid who's dealing with like being in Catholic school when he's not Catholic and he doesn't want to be there. Pretty interesting. I thought it was well done, but not really for me. So 3 stars. And then I have 3 books here that I'm currently reading. I'm currently reading The Phantom Tollbooth. This is a reread for me. I absolutely adore this book. Gun Machine by Warren Ellis. I am interested to see how this goes, but recently I've just been a little bit overwhelmed with work and it's affecting my ability to read. So I'm not having the best time reading, unfortunately. And that book is quite dark, so I don't know how that's gonna go. Same with this one, The Virgin Suicides. I have been reading this book for kind of a long time, and I'm really, really enjoying it, but I'm also just in general having a hard time reading right now, considering how busy my mind feels. And that is what I have this year, at least so far. I'm not expecting to read that many more books than these 3. I have a volume of Flying Witch that I'm reading currently from my library, and then I have a volume of Spy Family that is on hold. And I'm really thinking of looking at my shelves over there and seeing what I want to pick up, because when I look at this big stack of books, obviously a lot of the books that I own are the ones that I already had, and so therefore I still have them after I read them. But looking at that and how many really, really wonderful books I had already owned and I absolutely enjoyed, I think it would be great for me to look at what I have instead of constantly looking at what other people are recommending and then looking at what my library has to offer. So I think I'm going to look more on my own shelves in the coming months. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Raided my shelves a little bit and then I just have a pile down here. It's a nightmare. So anyway, thank you so much. Goodbye. Have a good day.